Okay. Glory to God in the highest, peace on earth, goodwill to men. The Lord God omnipotent reigns. Great power is given to Jesus in heaven and in earth. Daily power. Only one God and one mediator between God and men. The man, Christ Jesus, gave himself a ransom for many. So here we are, another illustrious message on the contradictions in the Gospel of Matthew. Part 8. And I already started this section on the abomination of desolation. We found that the true fulfillment of the prophecy of Daniel really happened in 167 to 164 BC. That's when it really happened. So I'm going to continue on explaining that. And we have that king, see his name right there, Antiochus IV Epiphanes. But Antiochus was a Seleucid king who ruled from 175 BC to 164 BC. So, and he was the one who conquered temporarily, just for 3 years, apparently. Well, there's so much to know about it, all the different historical records. But they took back the temple after 3 years, and it was prophesied by Daniel. That's the amazing thing. It's roughly 3 years. It was 3.5, the numbers come out to about 3.5 years, something like that. I think it's close enough. So let me start reading some of these prophecies using the English Standard Version. This one right here is 9:27. And he shall make a strong covenant with many for 1 week, and for half of the week, and he shall put an end to sacrifice and offering. So he put an end to sacrifice and offering of the Jews. It's a big deal. It would be an abomination, say, abomination of desolation. And on the wing of abominations shall come one who makes desolate. That'd be the king, Antiochus Epiphanes. Shall come one who makes desolate until the decreed end is poured out on the desolator. You see, so Antiochus was the desolator, and he died about 3 years afterwards. And it's not clear how he died. There's a bunch of stuff online about it, and it's not clear. And nobody's really 100% sure what happened to him, but he died. And so I wrote here, Antiochus IV died in 164 BC. He took over Israel in 167. It's approximately 3 years after the desecration began. And we have chapter 11, Daniel. Forces from him shall appear and profane the temple and fortress, and shall take away the regular burnt offerings, and they shall set up the abomination that makes desolate. That would be the sacrificing of pigs. They removed all the pieces of the temple, all the equipment, and they turned it into a pagan temple. You'll see that as I read on. Daniel 7:25, and he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws, and they shall be given into his hand until a time and times and the dividing of time. I'll tell you what that means in a minute. If it wasn't for the AI, I wouldn't know anything about this. I just wouldn't be talking about it. There's no way. You can search online and you'll find some information, but you don't know. Then we have Daniel 12:7. And I heard the man clothed in linen, which was upon the waters of the river. That's an angel. He saw an angel. When he had held up his right hand and his left hand to heaven, and swore, let me change that to swore, by him that lives forever, that it shall be for a time, times, and a half. It's the same thing we just read above. So it was repeated. And I'm going to tell you what that means. And when he shall have accomplished to scatter the power of the holy people, all these things shall be finished. In other words, in that time frame, after that time frame. So here it is right here. Prophetic context. Time, times, and a half a time. So Daniel 7:25 and Daniel 12:7 both mention a period of time, a period of a time, times, and half a time. He repeated it, or time, times, and a half a time, same thing. This is widely interpreted as, okay, here it is. A time equals a year. Times equal 2 years, so it's 2 times. And then a half a time be a half a year. So the total is 3.5 years. And that's not that. Or 1,260 days. Then it actually mentions days at one point. I think I have it down farther. First I'm going to read 1 Maccabees. But it says 1,290 days, so it's off a little bit. But it's pretty close. Pretty close. So here's amazing information from 1 Maccabees, part of the Apocrypha. You can get that in the e-sword if you want it. It's called the KJVA. In other words, the A is for the Apocrypha. So it's 1 Maccabees. I got a section of Maccabees, and then I have another section. I just chose out some sections because this whole chapter is worth reading. 20 through 24. And after that Antiochus had smitten Egypt, he returned again in the 143rd year, and went up against Israel and Jerusalem with a great multitude, and entered proudly into the sanctuary, and took away the golden altar. This is amazing stuff. And the candlestick of light, and all the vessels thereof, and ransacked the place. Verse 22. And the table of the showbread, and the pouring vessels, and the vials, and the censers of gold, and the veil, and the crown, and the golden ornaments that were before the temple, all which he pulled off. Verse 23, and he took also the silver and the gold, of course, and the precious vessels. Also he took the hidden treasures which he found. So he totally burglarized the place. And when he had taken all the way, he went into his own land, having made a great massacre, and spoke very proudly. Very happy about that, apparently. It amazes me that God allows things like this. He does this all kinds of ways from Tuesday. And, you know, throughout history, today and back then and everything. You know, because he allows these aliens to go around and abduct people. And he allows them to have all this power, flying machines, and they can go through walls and everything. He allows it. So it doesn't make any sense when you try to make sense out of it, but yet, you know, God is there, but what exactly he's doing isn't really 100% clear. Then we have 1 Maccabees 1, on the same chapter, 44 through 47. For the king had sent letters, it just gets more and more amazing with this stuff. For the king had sent letters by messengers to Jerusalem and the cities of Judah, that they should follow the strange laws of the land, which would be the new ones that he was going to make up, which banned burnt offerings and sacrifice. So he banned the whole Jewish religion. Banned burnt offerings and sacrifice and drink offerings in the temple. And that they should ignore the Sabbaths and festival days, just ignore them, and pollute the sanctuary and holy people. Yeah, so they were going to just pollute it and do other sacrifices. 47. Set up altars and groves and chapels of idols, and sacrifice swine's flesh and unclean beasts. So he desecrated it. He didn't destroy it. He desecrated it big time. So that it was an abomination, big time. Okay, then I had three more verses that I thought were good to read in that same first chapter, verse 54 through 57. Now the 15th day of the month, Caslu, or Casla, I don't know what that means. Obviously it means something. In the 145th year, they set up the abomination of desolation upon the altar. You see? It says it right here in the Maccabees. And built idol altars throughout the cities of Judah on every side. Verse 56. And when they had torn in pieces the books of the law, I found that amazing. So they just they tried to destroy all the records of the law of Moses. But obviously they did not. They couldn't get them all. Couldn't get them. And people had them hidden away. There were copies that were preserved. And then it says, which they found, ones that they could find. And then it says they burned them with fire. So they tried to burn all the books of the Jewish religion. All the books of Moses' laws. And whoever was found with any of the books of the covenant, or if any were committed to the law, all they had to do is just say they were committed to it. The king's commandment was that they should be put to death. So this guy was really anti-Jewish. He was the perfect example of anti-Semitic. So then it says in the famous books by Josephus, everybody knows Josephus. There wasn't too many historians back then, and he was the one. We have this record of what he wrote right here. Josephus, a Jewish historian in Antiquities of the Jews. That's the name of the book. Book 12, chapter 5.4. And when the king had built an idol altar on God's altar, he killed pigs on it, and so offered a sacrifice neither according to the law or the Jewish religious worship in that country. He also compelled them to forget the worship which they paid their own God. So he wanted them to forget worshiping their God and to adore those whom he took to be gods. So he wanted them to stop worshiping his gods, and made them build temples and raise idol altars in every city and village and offer pigs on them every day. A swell kind of a guy. So some people say, oh, well, Jesus was talking about the destruction of the temple in 70 AD as being the abomination of desolation, but that wasn't the same. It didn't come in the time frame that Daniel had said. It wasn't a desecration. The desolator didn't die in 3 years the way they prophesied it. They just destroyed the temple. So I wrote here, in 70 AD, the Romans destroyed the temple, but did not actually desecrate it like Antiochus did. So it was destruction, not a desecration, in 70 AD. So around 167 BC, Antiochus IV banned Jewish religious practices, including daily sacrifices at the temple in Jerusalem. This is commonly referred to as the abomination of desolation, see? And occurred around December, he even gives the month, December 167 BC. And then it even says in Daniel 12:11, and from that time that the regular burnt offerings is taken away, and the abomination that makes desolate is set up. So both those things had to happen, or did happen at one point, and then after that there would be, then it says, there shall be 1,290 days. So they came out with like 1,260. There's another term too, a 1,340. I don't even know what that's supposed to be. Nobody really knows. But it's very, very close. I think it's close enough, by all means. And so, it goes on to say 1,290 days. This number equates to about 3.5 years plus 1 month. Though not exact, the period between the desecration of the temple and the key word here, it's rededication. So it only lasted about 3 years, 3.5 years, because he died. I'm not sure how that worked, but somehow they were able to rededicate the temple. I'm not sure if there's any information about exactly how that transpired, except the fact that he did die. So maybe that changed everything. Apparently. Approximates this range, the temple was rededicated in December of 164 BC. Kislev 25, must be an old calendar term, known as the Feast of Dedication or Hanukkah, from late 167 to late 164 BC is around 3 years, but some propose adjustments or symbolic interpretation to reach the 1290 days. All right, so that is the story. So now we're going to continue on with the chapter because we made a very large detour within the chapter. We were in chapter 24, Matthew 24. See that? And what I did is I put 15 in again so that we could see it. This is the correct translation because remember the King James is false because it says stand in the holy place. In other words, go into the church. That's what that would mean to me. When this desolation of abomination was supposed to happen, as if that would make a difference. No, because the correct translation is standing in the holy place. In other words, the abominable, unclean animals, pigs, and so forth, will be set up in the holy place. You see? And like I said before, and I showed in the last message, that most versions say standing in the holy place. And there's even 2 versions that are older than the King James that have that too. And I put them in the last message. So let's go on with the false prophecies of Jesus. The atonement of Jesus worked because he was an immortal. Not because he was some kind of a flawless God creature, a God being, and that he was like never made a mistake or anything. No, it was because he was an immortal. He was already immortal. So when he gave his life was an immortal life. It wasn't immortal. It wasn't a mortal life. It was an immortal life. So the strength of his death through his blood shed and so forth provide eternal atonement, eternal power. I think that's safe to say because people still experience his power 2,000 years after his death, burial, and resurrection. Death, entombment, he wasn't buried. Death, entombment, but people say burial. He wasn't buried. Death, entombment, and resurrection. And ascension, and glorification, all that. So he was just totally had no clue about the future, Jesus. He was totally in the dark as much as anybody, for the most part. So, he's claiming that, this crisis was going to happen. The picture that is painted in the King James is that there's going to be some kind of a crisis. And he said, stand in the holy place and then flee to the mountains. Let him which is on the housetop not come down to take anything out of his house. So I wrote here, all roofers, roof dwellers, and roof sunbathers are to come down. It's really kind of silly that he would say that. If you're up on the roof, come on down. But don't take anything out of your house. Run like hell. Run for your life. It's ridiculous. Neither let him which is in the field return back and take his clothes. That's ridiculous. That's silly. When they were attacked, it didn't matter what you did. You didn't get any warning. Although some people probably tried to get away, but we don't get the details on that. But it didn't matter where you were in the temple. They destroyed the temple. Well, actually, the 70 AD, they destroyed the temple. 167 BC, you couldn't hide in the temple. They would have got you. You couldn't run. You could hide, but you couldn't get away. And to them that are with child, pregnant. And to them that give suck in those days, you won't be having fun. I wrote that. I guess that's my translation. That end of that. No. I think this is similar. That's similar to what's there. I didn't like whatever was there. Verse 20, but pray that your flight be not in the winter. Oh yeah, then he'll change the whole thing, right? How are we going to pray for that when you didn't even know it was going to happen? They didn't know that was going to happen, that they were going to be attacked by the Romans. Depends on which conquering we're talking about. Either way, there's no way of knowing what the future was going to be unless there was a prophet. And I don't know of any prophet that warned. I don't know of any prophet that warned them of the 167 BC or the 70 AD. Neither on the Sabbath day. I wrote, instead, pray the whole thing won't happen. Well, yeah, if you actually think it's going to happen, pray it won't happen. Not just that your flight won't be in the winter. That's ridiculous. It's silly. So, yeah, the word tribulation is the word. Verse 21, for there will be great tribulation, such as was not since at the beginning of the world to this time, no. Nor ever shall be. Well, that's certainly not true. That was a false. If he said that, it was a totally false statement. Totally. You know, there's been so many tribulations after that 70 AD that isn't funny. So I just wrote, it never happened. It never happened that it was the last tribulation. And except those days should be shortened, there should no flesh be saved. I think not. There are other people in the world, they weren't just the Jews. But for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened. Nonsense. That's just not true. It's just hogwash. Supposedly the whole world will experience this. I think not. That's what I wrote over here. Verse 23, then, if any man shall say to you, look, here is Christ. Actually, there should be a comma here. Look, here is Christ. Or there is Christ. Believe it not. So I just wrote, he would be dreaming. Right. So, what is this supposed to mean? It's just not much. For there shall arise false Christs and false prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders, insomuch that, if it were possible, they shall deceive the very elect. Who, what, where, and when. That's what I wrote here. Those are all the questions I have about what he just said. I have told you before, Jesus was incapable of telling the future except for the temple being destroyed. That was the only thing that he seemed to know. He believed it would be destroyed. Although he said every stone would be knocked down, that wasn't right either. But other than that, he didn't know anything about the future. Verse 26, wherefore, if they shall say to you, he is in the desert, go not forth. He is in the secret chambers. Believe it not. I just wrote, I won't just be around all of a sudden. Verse 27, for as the lightning comes out of the east and shines even to the west, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. Wow, we haven't seen that yet, huh? So I wrote, an elaborate false prediction. Yeah, it's been 2,000 years since this was written. And remember, this whole chapter is about the temple being destroyed. They asked him about that. And this whole thing is about destruction of the temple and Israel. I just noticed I I actually went over this whole chapter. It's like 50 verses. So I'm just going to do a few more and then just pick it right up where I leave off. We have this amazing verse right here, verse 29. Immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened. Wow. And the moon shall not give her light. You sure about that? And the stars shall fall from heaven. That's really far out. That's totally off the wall exaggeration of the utmost degree. And the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. It's the same in the book of Luke. I went over this already. It's like plagiarized from one or the other. It's the most same exact thing. It was copied from one book to the other. That's what we ended up with. So I wrote here, extreme drama, dreamland, and it totally never happened. Some people say, oh, it might happen soon. It's going to happen soon. They've been saying that for 2,000 years. And the book of Patmos John is the ultimate fantasyland dream. Christian dreamland. Verse 30, and then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. In other words, in the sky. But I thought he just said that he was going to come back like lightning already. So now it's saying, now you'll see the sign. Well, he just said you're going to see the sign as lightning. And then shall all the tribes of the earth, all the countries of the earth mourn. And they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven. The clouds in the sky with power and great glory. Well, that certainly never happened. And he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. Period. So I wrote, makes for a good movie, but not reality.